Welcome back, everyone, to Between the Ropes TV. Guys, I think this is our first video, isn't it, since the weekend? So, obviously, the big AJ fight. I wanted to start off by giving a massive thanks, obviously, to all our new subscribers, everyone that joined us. I know especially the reaction. The reaction was absolutely amazing for us. We had over 100 people, 150 people live at one point. Just wanted to say a massive thank you for that. And also just, watch out for more watch-alongs. They're definitely coming. We're going to be doing more. We've obviously got the Tyson Fury Wilder one coming this month as well. But of course, we're not on about that today. We're going to be looking at Sky's redesign of boxing. And let's face it, the way that the Zone are going, it's needed, isn't it? At the end of the day, I'm still a bit like Chris Eubank Jr. for me. He's always on the wrong side. I mean, he started off on like Channel 5, was it? Or Channel 4? It was one of these ones when everyone was on Sky. And now everyone's heading across to the Zone and he's joined Sky. It's an interesting one. But of course, we're going to go through the card. We're going to pick the three main fights. We're obviously going to start. I think we'll start with... where shall we start, Josh?
I think... Should we start with David Avanesyan versus Liam Taylor?
Yes, start with Avanesyan versus Taylor. Obviously, Avanesyan, he's coming off obviously a big win, wasn't it, against Josh Kelly? A bit of a shock win, is fair to say.
No.
Would you not say that?
No, to be honest, I sort of had Avanesyan as the favourite. I couldn't quite tell you what the bookies had it at. I know it was pretty close, but no, I thought, in fairness to Avanesyan, he's a very good boxer, who I think he's just not the sort of commercial draw, so it limits him getting those big fights. Every time he steps up to world level, he's pushed these people to the absolute limits, and it's not a good night's work for them, as Josh Kelly found out. So I just think, it's tough, isn't it? Because if you're not a good draw, but you're a really good boxer, chances of you getting these big fights are slim.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? That's what Fury said about Usyk recently before, obviously, his win to Joshua. He just said that even if he wins, I might not fight him because he's just not a big draw. I think that's incorrect now. I really do.
To be fair, I think it was just tongue-in-cheek from Fury, wasn't it? Because you are, I think Chisora and Usyk was around the million pay-per-view buys. I know it was a decent undercard, and obviously Chisora's a big fan favourite, but I think that's tongue-in-cheek. But, as far as this fight goes, I'm a little bit disappointed with it, really. I mean, it's brilliant for Liam Taylor. He's coming into this 23 wins, a draw and a loss. But I think he's quite fortunate to have this opportunity for a European title. He's nothing really on his record sort of jumps out that makes you think, this is incredible. He's a good fighter, but I think he's a couple of fights shy of this. I mean, it's going to be a record.
And what's really interesting is, yes, on paper, he's got a good record, but I think it's quite a padded record. I was having a look through it, obviously, today, and he just seems to be fighting quite a lot of people that have got heavy losses on his record. Ben, I'm guessing you're probably going to say as well that, I mean, it's going to be Avanesyan, isn't it, that's going to win this?
I think so, especially if he does half the performance he did against Kelly. I think he'll win. I think when a fighter can win by having his opponent's team throw the towel in, it just shows he was annihilating them. It just shows the team didn't want them in anymore. And that 6th round, Kelly's fast and he got rid of the speed, and Kelly he looked like he didn't want to be there. And I think Avanesyan, I think like Josh said, people don't seem to want to fight him, but I think after that,
he's gone.
He's gone. This new laptop's not working out.
He was picking up on something that you were saying about the fact that people don't want to fight him because he's not that commercial draw. I don't know, maybe another win against an English name probably would it make him a bit more of a draw, or do you not think so?
Sorry about that.
No, I think it would make him a bit more of a draw. But I think it's not even the English name, is it? It's, on the world level, there's a lot of big welterweights in America. That's one issue. But then, like, over here, he could be taking a better fight now. I mean, it is going to be a recurring thing through this preview for me. I feel like this card, while it's not a bad card, I feel like it's designed at building all three of, their new names in this stable, whether it be Avanesyan, Riakporhe, or Eubank Jr. I think it's sort of the precursor for bigger things. And it's go in there, look good, and we'll move on.
I completely agree. And moving on to, obviously, that clash coming up at the weekend. Obviously, the big cruiserweight clash, mainly just because of seeing Rafor back in action. I mean, his record's really impressive, isn't it? Especially at a British level. Wins against Callum, Bill and Smith, Tommy McCarthy. As I said about Liam Taylor, I said his stats look a little padded. You definitely can't say that about him, can you? I think his stats look. It's a very impressive undefeated record for me.
No, very impressive. He's 11-0, 8 knockouts, so he brings power to it. Got to correct you, sorry, Scott. Chris Billam-Smith.
What did I say?
You said Callum.
One of those days.
No, yeah. So before everyone starts Googling Callum Billam-Smith, no, it's Chris Billam-Smith. But no, he beat them both. And to be honest, for me, he was on the cusp of making that jump up at the time. A couple of years ago, there was talk of the Okoli fight. Riakporhe's now talking that up again, saying that he thinks he'd knock Okoli out. And I think it's a fight I'd like to see, but, I think it's pronounced Twardowski, who's coming into this 9-2. He hasn't been KO'd, so he might be quite durable, which will, should give Riakporhe rounds. And that's what Riakporhe needs this weekend. He's coming off the back of 2 years out.
That's it.
He needs to get some rounds under his belt before he can jump back in with the likes of a Tommy McCarthy, Chris Billam-Smith, or even the likes of a Jack Massey, who's just won the IBF European. So, he needs to, he needs some rounds. But again, I just think it's the same. I expect him to look good. And it's, will there be another card even announced December time?
Josh, obviously you picked up on the fact that, I think he's got himself has said he's got his eyes on Okoli. And why wouldn't you? That would be a massive English-British clash. It would also be a massive London clash. I believe both of them coming from different parts of London. Bernard, do you agree with Josh? Is it a bit too soon for that step in terms of, he needs to get the rounds in, doesn't he? I think I agree with Josh with that. Just saying, do you agree with that as well? And are you also expecting a pretty easy win today? Not today, the weekend.
I think it depends because, I think he'll win, but it depends if he wants to make light work of it. I think it's 2 years after a brilliant 2019. He cleaned up the British level. I think that's exactly what he did. He's ready to move forward. But then after that, 2 years out, it's a good fight where he can get the rounds in. A bit like Chris Eubank in his last fight. He could have stopped the bloke in the second, but he didn't. He wanted the rounds. I think this is good for Riakporhe. He can either go in, do a job, or he can get the ring rust off and he can just build into it. And if he's not up to it, it might be harder work than what he was thinking. But I think he's just got to take his time. And this card, like Josh already said, it's there to make them look good, then for them to take the next step. It's very much a card that DAZN did with the fight camp. I think it's the set up for the certain fighters to win, to push them forward. And I think that's what Sky's doing. They don't want to risk any of them on the first card. They want people to get excited about them. I think I'm not excited about the card, but I really do understand why they're doing what they're doing. And I'm excited, though, to see Riakporhe in the future and hopefully against Okoli.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, isn't it, with the card? Although they're not the strongest fights, some of them you could argue are going to be very one-sided. You do feel it's good to see some of the names, isn't it?
I think another factor is, as I can't remember if we spoke about it on camera, I know we have off, is the fact that, this new pool that Ben Shalom, Boxer and Sky Sports have developed and sort of they are adding to with Wasserman. I think, they've not got many big names. So the issue is, if they put all these people in hard fights, everyone loves a big showdown in December. Obviously, we have got, in fairness, Josh Taylor versus Jack Catterall, but that Josh Taylor's a brilliant side of that. Jack Catterall, I don't know how excited I am about that fight, if I'm honest. And I think, these people, I think they might look to get certainly Riakporhe and Eubank Jr. back out in December to make an absolute, it may even be a pay-per-view card then, mightn't it?
A very star. I agree. I
think that's the factor with giving them these easier fights now.
Yeah, especially when obviously some of them need that time in the ring, I think. And it's going to be an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, obviously we'll move on to the main events as you could, as it is going to be. But you look at it, we believe it's pronounced Murator. Is that what we're going for?
Muratov.
We'll go for Muratov then. Yes, that's right. To be fair, he's a late step in, isn't he? Obviously, the original opponent tested positive for COVID. A late step in. Now, we know about these late step ins. Sometimes it's not as easy as people may think. I mean, obviously, the most obvious example of that, of course, is going to be the Joshua Ruiz example, isn't it? That people are going to keep drawing on. Do you see that kind of event happening, Ben, or is Eubank Jr.? He's just going to get the rounds in, put on a bit of a show, create a bit of a buzz around him again?
Well, I don't think it'll be any trouble for Eubank. I do think he's a top operator, and I think he's heading towards whether he's going to reach bigger things, but bigger fights. And I think, is it what we say, Miratov? He's ranked 7th. I can't remember which one it's with. But it's not a nobody in their eyes. And I just think it's to get him out. They had him lined up anyway with such short notice. Now, I think Eubank's going to go in there. I think he'll finish him in the later rounds. I've got a feeling Joshua about the paper at the end of the year. I think Golovkin. I think he could be going for Golovkin at the end of the year.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because he's looking to eye up either Golovkin or obviously Saunders. Josh, are you were shaking your head? I'm guessing you don't see that fight happening. I mean, I'm with Ben. I'd love to see it happen. But
I'd love to see it happen, but I think it's one of the worst kept secrets that Golovkin's supposed to be fighting Murata for the WBA belt in a unification with obviously the IBF in December. So I think that, everyone's just sort of, it's been the case all year that has.
Billy
So,
Joe?
Go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say, what about Billy Joe? I was just throwing the other name into it.
I don't think he'll be ready. I mean, he did an interview on IFL a couple of weeks ago. He didn't look in shape. Obviously, his eyes looking normal, but I don't know the status of his injury. I think that would be like your May next year type thing.
Yeah.
But, as far as this fight goes, Muratov's coming in 24 wins, 2 losses, 17 knockouts. It's the WBA that he's ranked 7 with. But he has been knocked out in both his defeats, and he's been very active recently. I think he fought 3 weeks ago in the US, and then it was like another 3 weeks before that. Don't get me wrong, against opponents with, more losses than wins on their record, so definite journeyman. But he'll be fit, he'll be game, and let's be honest, this is an opportunity for a fighter like that. So I do think Eubank will win. I think he'll get him in like 3, 4, 5 round stoppage. But I think he's going to come, and I think while it lasts, he'll try and push it, if you know what I mean. I don't think he'll be coming to survive at number 7 with the WBA. Potentially for him, he could gate crash this title scene. And obviously the WBA have changed the structure of their belts, interim, mandatories, and all that's been changed. But he could still gate crash it, and that's the motivation for him, isn't it?
So you don't, I suppose you don't see like what we saw in Eubank's last performance where he just focused on getting the rounds in. You think he's probably treat him with a bit more respect. If he sees a chance to finish it, he'll finish it.
No, I think like he said himself, his new camp with Roy Jones Jr., they'd worked together for 12 months prior to the Marcus Morrison fight, and he could have took him out in the second, as Ben rightly said. But he didn't. He wanted the rounds. He's had that now. He got, he banked 10 rounds. Now I think he's going to want to show the more destructive side of what he's been working on with Roy Jones. And let's be fair to Chris Eubank. He's always had that destructive streak. It just needed harnessing and fine-tuning. And, you look back to what Roy Jones Jr. did himself, he's an absolute legend of the sport. So I'm very, very excited to see those little tweaks that he's made when Eubank's on the front foot and trying to finish a fight. It's just a shame that I don't think, he's already been knocked out twice. As I said, I don't know when Eubank starts and he thinks, I'm at my depth here. I'm not sure how much he'll try to stay in the fight. I think it could be one of those, where we see someone go down and they just stay down and think, I want no part of this. That's my only worry for this fight.
I've had my payday.
One thing I like about Eubank, he doesn't slip up he doesn't, even though he seems a bit arrogant, he doesn't take people lightly. Like his 2 losses were against big opponents, Billy Joe and George Groves. I think all these other smaller names he's fought, he's never gone in and just not looked up to it. He's always gone in with that same look on his face. And he's always, I must admit, I do like the performances he puts on. And he looks good in his uppercut. I always think the uppercut looks dangerous when he's in the ring.
For sure. And I think you touched on a point there, Ben, about the fact of, a bit of arrogance, a bit of maybe, it's a weird one, isn't it, Eubank Jr.? I think it'd be fair to say he's probably not the UK, he's not in that list of UK favourite boxers, people, the one that people adhere to. Why do you think that is, Josh? Do you think it's just a mixture of obviously the fact that, obviously he used to have his dad as a trainer. He probably hasn't been promoted in the best way. He's obviously naturally arrogant. Do you feel that, like, under this new camp as well, could we see a bit more likability towards him? Or is that just going to be the fight he's going to be and you either like it or lump it?
No, I think, he's been mismanaged at times, more so his dad. But they sort of did a good job of annoying every sort of promoter they worked with, didn't they? They upset Channel 5, then did a bit with Frank Warren. And, it's very well publicised, the spats that Eubank Sr. and Frank Warren had, even publicly at press conferences. And then, obviously, he went and did a bit with Matchroom on Sky a few years ago, didn't he? And, the same thing happened there with the whole Golovkin fight then. And it was, some of the stuff Eddie Hearn's come out with in recent years since about trying to deal with Eubank. It would have been hard work, and I don't think any of that's helped him. So, he's been mismanaged. I mean, fair play to him. He tried to launch the ITV box office platform.
Yes,
obviously, he had like Arthur Abraham. He had a couple of fights, didn't he? Then obviously fought De Gale as well on there.
It was a super series, wasn't it? That's where it started.
Yeah. So, I think he will get. I think he will get that support. He's older, clearly more mature. Roy Jones Jr. carries a lot of fans, so you can't help but be interested in the situation because of that. And I also think, he's been painted out as the poster boy for this new Sky and Box platform. Personally, I mean, Josh Taylor for me would be your main man. The guy's a brilliant fighter, but they're pushing Eubank. It's the name; it brings eyes to the product. So I think eventually, there's a lot of talk of the Liam Williams fight. That's a fight I'd love to see, although it's not for a world title. But domestically, it's a brilliant fight. And again, two sort of come forward fighters. So it would be fantastic. So that's actually the fight I'd like to see if he was back out in December.
No, for sure. It's going to be an interesting card, as we've said. I think it's more about the fact of promoting the names and this new look Sky, obviously boxing look as well. But I still think it's going to be good to see some of these names back in action. And on a personal note, we are heading towards 100 subs, aren't we? We're getting closer and closer, especially after the weekend. So, guys, if you are still watching and you're not subscribed, firstly, why not? Come on, you've obviously enjoyed us. Secondly, hit that like button. Any final thoughts? Are we all done here?
Well, one thing I'd say is I like what Sky are doing. I think they're giving people the opportunity who, in his own, their own matchroom, they'd be lower down the card. And I must admit, I like what they're doing there. Josh Kelly getting in fights on home soil, brilliant. I think Eubank, look where he fights on the card for Eddie Hearn. I think these fighters they're going to put centre stage. They've all got exciting futures, and I think that will be managed correctly through Sky.
For sure. I think it's going to be interesting to monitor, isn't it? Obviously, this debate between the Zone and obviously Sky, it's going to keep on going, and it could even cross into other sporting ventures as well. With it's going to be a massive one to monitor over the next few years. It's going to be that subscription service versus the pay-per-view service. I mean, me personally, I'm already edging my bets on that subscription service. I think it works better with general TV already than a pay-per-view service. I think that's been proven on multiple other televised streams now. Obviously, you like some Netflix and Amazon coming out on top. So an interesting one to monitor, an interesting card. Guys, hit that like button, hit subscribe, and we shall see you on the next video.
Cheers.